Now for our second keynote presentation, Dr. Miyuki IIYAMA, Director of Research Strategy Office of JIRCAS, will give a talk on the post-COVID-19 global agendas for agricultural R4D.
Thank you for introduction. Today's symposium focuses on the relation between COVID-19 and the global food system. Dr. Schmidt-Huber highlighted the role of international trade as channels of transmission of COVID-19. My presentation will look into more structural challenges of today's global food system, then emphasize the critical importance of agriculture research, especially targeting smallholder agriculture sector in the developing countries. This September, a high-level policy report titled Future Food System was published. According to it, the 20th century food system was successful in achieving calorie supply, yet at the significant cost of human and planetary health. They claim that today's food system is outmoded and not sustainable, requiring fundamental transformation. What is wrong with today's global food system, and how science, technology, and innovation can fix them? In order to answer the questions, we need to understand the constraints of the current system. We will acknowledge the heterogeneity and context specificity of agriculture sectors. Still, in order to facilitate the discussion, we assume the global food system is consisting of the two sectors, industrial agriculture and smallholder agriculture. The two sectors present distinctive features, including technological evolutions, environmental footprints, nutrition discourses, and the bottlenecks of transformations. First, we define industrial agriculture as high input, high output system, often characterized by monoculture of calorie-dense and oil crops. In turn, smallholder agriculture is agroecologically conditioned, often rain-fed. The two sectors have exhibited distinctive technological evolutions. The industrial agriculture, such as in the US and Brazil, is characterized by high fertilizer application and achieved 5 to 6-fold yield increase over the several decades. Even farm size is small, farms in China achieved enormous cereal yield improvement. In contrast, in Africa, for example, the application of fertilizer has remained minimum, and the improvement of yield has stagnated over years. In the 1960s, still most of the world population had insufficient calorie intakes. By today, more countries in the world consume calories more than necessary, while some countries in Asia and Africa still suffer from insufficient intakes. Either overnutrition or undernutrition is characterized by poor diet, deficient in healthy foods such as vegetables and fruits. In order to understand the bottlenecks of transformation of the current food system, let me refer to the concept of yield gaps used by agronomists. First, assume yield of crops depends on the interaction of genetics, environment, and management. Attainable yield is defined as a yield achieved under near optimum G by E by M. In reality, attainable yield is achieved only theoretically. Farmers usually do not have access to materials optimized for their specific farm environment. They also do not implement recommended agronomy practices due to labor and capital constraints. As a result, there are gaps between attainable yield and actual yield. In industrial agriculture, a typical farm operates a monoculture of calorie-dense staple crops at large farm. A farm manager often applies a large amount of fertilizer, more than necessary across farm, to maximize outputs. It can achieve near 100% attainable yield, while redundant chemicals become emissions and pollutants. In contrast, in smallholder agriculture, the diversity of farm is very high, even within relatively small regions. Therefore, the standardized package of technology is rarely optimal for an individual farmer. As a result, the yields are far below attainable yields. It means even before this year, the global food system has been undermining planetary and human health. Since the beginning of 2020, the COVID-19 outbreak has been sweeping the world. The implementation of movement restriction has led to the suspension of economic activities accompanied by a global economic crisis. In turn, despite a temporary fall in greenhouse gas emissions, climate change has not spared us. Instead, extreme natural disasters not experienced in decades are affecting our lives and planet. With this year's experience, we foresee more of catastrophes under the business as usual scenarios. To avoid such a future, it is urgent to mitigate emissions and biodiversity loss from agriculture, forestry, and other land uses. Now we try to understand the global food system at the juncture of the four crises. First, industrial agriculture is a major driver of overstepping the planetary boundaries and climate change. The smallholder agriculture is most severely affected by the impacts of changing climate, especially by extreme events. Facing the growing population while chronically suffering from stagnant productivity, smallholder farmers expand farm and grazing land. Deforestation and biodiversity loss have then increased the wildlife, livestock, human contact with increasing chances of zoonotic diseases. Once zoonotic diseases become pandemic, the global economy plunges into deep crisis as we are witnessing now. Turning around the vicious circle of the four crises requires intervention, especially targeting smallholder agriculture. Strategic areas include climate change mitigation, adaptation, production of quality and diverse food, sustainable intensification, and conservation. Aside from technology development, all stakeholders need to share information on how to transform the global food system into a sustainable one. We now know that transformation for sustainable food system is inevitable. To save the world both from climate change and pandemics, we need to reduce emissions, improve productivity, minimize pollution, and conserve biodiversity. To avoid climate change, the global community must reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Just 2 weeks ago, Japanese Prime Minister announced that Japan would achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050. As a country dependent on the global food system for food and nutrition security, Japan must commit itself to global efforts to reduce emissions in the agriculture sector through science and technologies. From agriculture, forestry, and fishery sectors, there are several strategic areas of research for development to play a key role in mitigation. The examples include reducing methane from rice paddy and livestock production, improving efficiency in nitrogen fertilizer uptakes by plants, enhancing carbon sequestration in forests, ocean, and soil, and improving productivity on existing land. Indeed, these areas correspond to JIRCAS research portfolios. Let us look more closely at improving productivity on existing farmland, or what we call sustainable agriculture intensification. In order to avoid not only climate change, but also pandemics, we must conserve 50% of the land on Earth. However, the growing food demand to feed the growing population has led to higher pressures on ecosystems in the developing countries. In some parts of the developing countries, such as Sub-Saharan Africa, doubling population is projected by 2050. Yet, these areas are the ones where yield gaps are large. Actual yields are only 10 to 20% of the attainable potential yield. In other words, the developing countries are where science-based agriculture is urgently needed to achieve sustainable agriculture intensification, even from the planetary point of view. We now come back to this framework and now revisit the concept of the sustainable agriculture intensification. This concept is to utilize the best multidisciplinary science to improve the crop yields per unit of land without damaging environment. Conventional technologies, however, have some economies of scale, meaning they favor large-scale operation, thus not easily be adaptable by smallholder farmers. Now we have smart technologies. Smart technology have potential to reduce costs of implementing the fine-scale optimization of G by E by M. Thus, these may provide leapfrog opportunity for developing countries. For example, a crop is estimated to have quite high yield potential, yet its actual yield is much lower due to defining limiting factors and suboptimal management, leaving large yield gaps. Furthermore, increasing frequency of climate change can negatively affect yield potential themselves, as conventional cultivars may no longer be optimal under changing climate. The advantage of smart agriculture include its potential to accelerate the genomic development through tools such as phenotyping and genome editing to identify genes adaptable to marginal environment. The advancement of the digital tools also allows the greater precision of spatio-temporal management decisions. Mobile application is considered potentially effective tools for extension services. By applying smart technology combined with sound science, farmers may be able to close yield gaps. As I highlighted before, the smallholder agriculture sector should be one of the primary targets for technology intervention under the Great Food Transformation. In guiding strategy for technology development and scale-up, one must understand farmers' decision-making equation. Assume researchers try to develop and introduce a technology with potential benefits, such as improving yield, or climate change adaptation, or mitigation, or nutrition improvement. However, for a smallholder farmer facing multiple resource constraints, a single benefit alone may not provide enough incentives for the adoption against costs perceived by farmers. Therefore, we have to understand trade-offs a farmer faces in locally specific contexts. One potential solution to the adoption is to focus on technology with multiple benefits to farmers. For example, scientists look at alternate wetting and drying technology from its mitigation potential. In turn, JIRCAS' research with a local partner in Vietnam revealed that AWD was not only contributing to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but also reducing operation costs while improving rice yield in comparison to control farms. When introducing this technology to farmers, it may be more effective to stress and communicate the economic benefits of the adoption, along with greenhouse gas emission reduction. Addressing the gaps between research objectives and the farmers' needs requires working with farmers and developing agencies on the ground. In this presentation, I highlighted the need of great food transformation for today's global food system. The key action points include the focus on nutrient-rich food, smallholder farmers, the efficiency of entire food systems, sustainable agriculture intensification with novel technologies. Addressing the post-COVID-19 agendas through agriculture development requires enabling conditions. First, interdisciplinary collaboration is needed. For example, agronomy and engineering, as well as socioeconomics. Public investment is still critical, especially in research and development for public goods, while some areas such as digital agriculture attracts business interests. Furthermore, collaboration between research and development agencies are needed to respond to accelerated challenges of the global food system agendas. And this is a topic for the following panel session. Thank you for your attention. This is the end of my presentation.